Clubhouse.
Jill, ask them what they think about supervillain.
That sounds better to me. More exciting.
Do you prefer saving America? How about saving the world?
Nope. It's saving America.
Welcome back to Pod Clubhouse's final episode of coverage for the fourth season of The Boys. This is for the 8th episode called Assassin Run. This is Paul, Pod Clubhouse, joined once again with my co-host, Kat. How are we doing today, Kat?
Doing good. Excited to talk about the finale.
We're actually going to get this one done on time. Isn't that something? We haven't been on time all season, but here we are, finishing strong.
Yes. We're flying in.
So what did you think of this one? If you look back at particularly seasons 2, 3, and 3, I guess, they ended with a big fight. Whereas I guess one ended with something like a cliffhanger to make you look forward and be like, okay, well, Becca's alive and Homelander knows where she is. So what's going to happen next? And it's not like the other ones didn't have a cliffhanger, but this one was all cliffhanger.
Yeah, especially because this season there's been a lot of it has felt a little bit more filler in some of these episodes. Mm-hmm. And there's been setups and things, but it really felt like, oh, is this the finale? Because I feel like there should be another episode after this. Mm-hmm. And it really did feel like it's just setting up. I mean, we know that there's a 5th season coming and it's the final one. So it did feel a little cop-outy where they're kind of just setting up the 4th season. And it left a lot of other lingering questions and not a lot of answers. I don't know. And not a lot of, I wish they would have tied up some of the loose ends. Although I will give it kudos for killing off some characters, which they hadn't done in a while, some of the main characters. So I liked that bit.
Yeah, well, like you say, I didn't necessarily see it coming. I mean, they've been trying to kill Victoria all season, so I guess maybe the writing was very much on the wall. But I actually thought that Huey's plan was okay, and getting her out of the plot was viable, but Billy had other plans.
Yeah, that was brutal because I did, by the end of the season, and also I think over the course of these seasons, I've really grown to like Victoria. Mm-hmm. So, but we should have seen it coming when she did that big speech of I'm tired of this and blah blah. That's red flag TV number one, death coming.
Yes.
That she kind of had her send off of I want to be a good person or blah blah, and then of course that couldn't happen.
To paraphrase Mother's Milk, too little too late, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man.
All right, so I've got maybe 5 little groupings of questions to go over. I'll start with my smallest one, and we had just recorded our episode for number 7, so we still have the situation with Frenchie and Kimiko's relationship fresh on our minds, and how it's almost like, except for getting that little bit of information about their backgrounds and their kind of shared sense of unworthiness for each other, with their desire to basically pick up their romantic relationship again, it's almost like we're just rewinding.
Yeah.
But are we glad to see them back on track, or are we just fatigued of their will they, won't they aspect at this point?
I mean, I love a good will they or won't they. I just don't like how they made it to this point, because it felt like it was just I wish they would have done it early on in the season and not gone through these silly kind of, Kimiko saying oh, go with this person, whatever, and then they kind of really dug out their feeling bad about the things that they've done, which it wasn't satisfying seeing them come together. One hand, yes, but the other, I was oh, okay, just do it already,
Yeah.
That's how it felt. And I was and there are a couple I actually really liked together, and And her saying, I knew like she didn't believe that, like she didn't want him to be with her, and probably because she didn't feel worthy. Like everything they said made sense for their characters, and like I wish I would have been just more satisfied. And I think it's because they strung us along too long. Like it went a beat too far, where I'm like, okay, I knew this was gonna come. Like it was just too obvious.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of how I felt at the end, because then with the finale moment, they separate them again.
Yeah, like there's no impact. It was just kind of like, okay, yeah, of course, you know, like they're going to do this.
Mm-hmm. So those characters that you saw in that scene, those were Gen V characters.
Yeah, I made that connection because I was like, oh, they look young. And then just because we've been talking about it all season, I was like, oh, I do like that they're tying in. Like if you saw Gen V, which you did, that you will know the background. And I'm glad that like someone like me, which I didn't watch, but they kind of like, I've seen the preview to the show and stuff and us talking about it where like it doesn't throw me off because I'm just thinking those are like probably part of the Homelander machine or, you know, soups.
Mm-hmm.
But it is cool that they did feel a little bit different, but like I wasn't thrown off by it. If people haven't seen Gen V, like they won't. And just watching the boys, like it won't be thrown off by it.
And those two characters, what happened in Gen V, they were part of the protagonist team. They were the good guys. The girl had been the girlfriend of Patrick Schwarzenegger, and the boy was Patrick Schwarzenegger's brother.
Oh, okay.
And her power is if she is touching you and speaks to you, then she can convince you to do anything, even forget stuff or think about things completely differently. Not just like go get in the paddy wagon like she told Frenchie or something. She could have said, forget everything about Kimiko. You've never heard of Kimiko.
Oh. Can you get it back?
Well, if she tells you to remember. She had been very integral with Patrick Schwarzenegger because he had been sore about the fact that since his brother was schizophrenic, they were keeping him kind of under lock and key because he was very powerful as a soup, but uncontrollable. And they wanted him to basically think that his brother was dead at one point. So they used her to do that. It was a great kind of heel turn for those two characters because it was like an ideological split between the protagonists, that one part of the group was like, we need to take the machine down. And the other part of the group was like, we need to become part of the machine. And that's where she and the other guy wound up. So when Homelander came to straighten out the situation, they sided with Homelander. And the other group got put into lockdown. And that's why they're part of the VOT 52 or whatever they called it presentation. They were like presenters there. And here they are backing up as deputized soups, rounding up the boys. So his powers are sort of undefined. It's like his level of crazy actually kind of prevents him from accessing everything consistently, but he is super strong. He is super tough. Don't know if he can fly, or maybe, you know how some super characters can kind of jump from where they need to go. I think
and it looks like they're flying, but they're just, it's like a jump.
Yeah, I think that's more what he does. But since he has trouble with his own mind and the meds they give him kind of screw him up, we never really got to see him at his full potential. I think I explained earlier, there's this very irreverent scene where there are agents sent to bring him in, and he's going through one of his schizophrenic phases right then. So he sees them all as Muppets.
Yeah.
And then he tears them all apart as Muppets. And then when he kind of comes back to reality, he's just surrounded by actual human bodies.
Oof.
Yeah, so he's a lot. He's a lot. So he does have powers similar to Kimiko, but I would believe that he is probably stronger than Kimiko.
I know, I think there's supposed to be like a second season. I know they're, obviously the one of the actors passed away, so I know they're probably trying to navigate how to move forward and be respectful of that. But I think there was like a season 2, like it's already been greenlit for season 2, right, with Gen V.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious to see if like they want that to continue. Like, is that going to continue since they're melding these? Like, did the end of Gen V begin at like this finale for that? You know what I mean? Like at the timeline.
The end of Gen V happened prior to the beginning of this season.
Okay, so you think they're just kind of flipping off, like, so
Yes.
maybe the finale of the season 5, and then they'll probably do Gen V continuing after that.
Yeah, something like
Okay.
that. There might be
Yeah.
some concurrent aspect to it, but you know how they use the news to talk about world events kind of in the background of what's happening in whatever we're seeing, whatever the characters are doing? Well,
Yeah.
kind of the stuff leading up to the trial of Homelander was that background stuff that they were talking about. So the trial hadn't happened yet. And in our show, the trial was just getting over.
Okay, got it. So it's kind of like sometimes parallel, but sometimes like not
Yeah.
like fully on the timeline.
Yeah. Remember how Billy mentioned that he went to where the virus was being manufactured and that is the final post-credit scene of Gen V. His arrival there would have happened maybe weeks after the events of the show and maybe lining up with the beginning of season 4 of The Boys.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. I do like that they're intertwining the two. I always love a good intertwine of shows if it makes sense. If they're just doing it to kind of like, like all the Marvel shows that have happened and like just doing it to like extend things. I don't like that, but it seems like these are very thoughtful. Like the Gen V was thoughtful in its kind of execution and like how they were going to weave it into The Boys.
Very much. They did a good job. So why do you suppose that they did separate Kimiko to go with the powerful soup and Frenchie just to go in the van? Is it just they're separating soups out from troublesome humans? It might just be a simple like admin thing. We need to put you in a stronger jail than we need to put him.
Yeah, I don't know if it was more personal than that. If they knew like more that they're like the boys and they want to separate the boys specifically, or yeah, maybe it's just that like human and soup. So I guess that's something that we'll find out in the next season. And I wonder if we're gonna see some of those, like using the prisons that were alluded to, if like that's where they're going, like Frenchie and Kimiko.
You notice that she did talk.
Yes.
Yeah,
She used her voice.
Yeah, was that the first time we heard her voice?
I think so. Which I see, like there was like moments like that where like really it would have been so much more impactful if like they had gotten together earlier. Or they wouldn't have like just played their storylines a little bit silly. Like it would have been so much more instead of them just getting together right away and feeling rushed. Because I think these last 2 episodes felt like they were like, oh, we didn't really do much this season. Let's like pack them in now. Like I don't know if it felt like that for you. Like where so many things that happened in the last episode, and then again in this finale, which should happen, but it just felt a little bit rushed.
These last 2 did feel denser. It's not that nothing happened in the other ones.
I felt like they were waiting just for, to like, oh, we got to do 7 and 8, and just put in all the things when they could have been doing that throughout the season instead of spending more time on Deep and his relationship with the.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Like we said in the last podcast, their relationship, Frenchie and Kimiko, it just basically reset to an earlier state.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next, let's take a look at Annie, fake Annie, and Huey. Did you notice when fake Annie was talking to Annie, she said that Annie, Starlight, had not been their first choice of shooter. Did it make you wonder who might have been?
It must have been someone who died, right? If they're not using them?
That's a good point.
Web slinger? Or whatever. What is his name?
Web weaver. Yeah, that's
Web weaver.
gross. In that scene when she copies Starlight, Billy's sitting right there. So I guess the answer probably isn't Billy, even though their biggest target is Billy for, members of the boys, I mean to say.
Because who else would it be? I think it would make more sense because they would want to frame him and like he could just they would love to put him in jail and have him suffer. So it has to be someone like that.
But she opted to go with Starlight. So you're probably right. The original intended copy was probably someone that died, or just they didn't have access to. Maybe it was Mother's Milk. Maybe, but I don't know. I mean, because he's been brought up a few times in Vought Tower this season. Marvin milk.
But I feel like he's such like low stakes. Like it wouldn't have made. I think it had to be either a soup or someone of really high importance. Like, yeah, I don't know.
We'll probably never know who exactly they meant to do it. Vicky would have been a very interesting one, but they needed Vicky to become president. However, her power, if applied correctly, would have killed everybody in the room if she wanted to. So that could have been a very interesting option as well, because she could have easily gotten into the bunker if she'd not been outed earlier that day. You know, so that might have been plan A.
Yeah.
Interesting about the time frame presented in this episode and last episode. 10 days passes between Annie's abduction and when they all go down to the bunker with Singer.
I was wondering because I know when Annie at the end asks Huey, like, oh, how many times do you have sex with fake me? And he was like, over 20. I was like, wait, what? Wasn't it just 2 days? But that makes more sense, like that timeline, which is so crazy because, like, I didn't really feel the days go by. You know, like, there's tell signs and stuff, but, like, I really just thought it was a couple of days.
It's that crazy TV timing, you know, where the plot that gets shown to us feels like a contiguous conversation. But in actuality, these 8 episodes ran from Election Day to January 6th, which is a couple of months. But it didn't feel like that. And until they did things like add the Christmas tree and that kind of stuff in the last episode, we didn't get a total sense of how much time was passing because it felt very back to back to back to back.
Yeah, the Christmas tree threw me off because I was like, wait, what? And then I got the January 6th thing, but I didn't realize. Yeah, like it was just weird. Like it didn't feel like time was passing. And it makes sense because even with like Butcher's storyline, he kept saying like, oh, I only have months to live. I have months, you know, like, so I was like, well, fuck, the month has been a lot. Like it feels like this is like, it felt like the season was 2 days. So I was like, well, you're going to live forever, you know, in TV time.
Well, I do have questions about Butcher and his ability to stay alive, but we'll get there once we wrap up with Annie, fake Annie, and Huey. In the bunker, there was a plot element that just didn't sit right with me, and I wonder how you felt about it. When Annie shows up and she says she used Find My Phone to get there, does that make any goddamn sense that you'd be able to get into a presidential security bunker? These places are hidden, and she just comes in.
Yeah,
I mean,
no.
I understand that she had to, but what?
Yeah, no, that doesn't make any sense. And also, like, Find My Phone, it wouldn't have gone through those, like, layers of concrete.
No. We know that the boys work for the CIA, but a lot of people work for the CIA that don't actually have like a badge or some kind of credential that would allow them access to a government facility. And I kind of wonder if the boys are in that category. You know, they're like contractors basically, rather than employees. I bring that up to mean like, I just don't think she would have had access.
It's a little bit sloppy in that regard.
I understand she had to get there, but it just stuck out to me. It's like, that doesn't wash. That doesn't make any sense at all. But be that as it may, that's how it went.
Yeah. Or do you think, I mean, the more plausible thing, I think maybe that's what she told Huey and he was like, oh yeah, whatever. But we do know from the later interrogation between fake Annie and real Annie that like she can see, or that thing or whatever it is, I don't know who the original being is, but that soup can inherit all the memories as well. So I guess with that logic, Annie knew how to get into the bunker and where it was, so then she would have known where it was.
Okay, maybe.
But couldn't obviously tell Huey like, oh, I know, you know where this is, but like made up some stupid
Find My Phone. Yeah.
But for us to kind of go down and but maybe for us to kind of go down this, like that was just a silly thing. Like what I can see, like maybe it was just like a panic thing, but like wouldn't you think that would do make a red flag for Huey? Like what?
Yeah. they kind of missed an opportunity maybe to do the which one's the real Annie kind of kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because it was clear all along. All right. So later, when Huey decides to make a plea for Victoria and try to give her that safety hatch, that escape hatch, I should say. Do you think that the plan would have worked if Butcher hadn't blown it up? Do you think that Newman was worth saving and that it could have worked?
I do think it could have worked. It honestly just felt like what she was saying was true. Like, she just wanted to protect her daughter. Obviously, she made her a soup to do that, so she could be, protect herself. Mm-hmm. And you only do that if you, really love someone and didn't want to do that to them. And it feels like, we were always on the fence of wondering if she was on Homelander's side, whether she wanted total soup domination, which I don't think she did. I think she just wanted to have something stable, regardless of whatever it was, and have a part in maybe helping that stability, which maybe it's a reason why she never outed herself, or she was never fully out, because she knew that would create the instability, and it was her way of kind of like hiding. And I don't think she was embarrassed to be a soup. It was just, and obviously her ability is really horrible because she just kills people, like, with her power. But I think she just kind of wanted it to be neutral. And so I feel like at that point she was tired because Homelander was going to just be crazy and she didn't want to be a puppet. So I feel like it could have worked, but we'll never know. Man, but what a brutal way to go. Victoria, it was just, Billy really did her wrong.
What do you suppose was the motivation there? Do you think it just like he couldn't trust her, or the plan was always to kill her, or she would probably stab them in the back at some point anyway? What do you suppose was his motivation for doing what he did?
Sometimes I think we forget that just because we know as an audience member all that's going on, that we have to remember that the characters inside the show don't have our perspective. And so sometimes it's easy for us to be like, well, why would Billy do that? Like, she was going to do this, X, Y, and Z. But we've been seeing it from the evolution of Huey and Victoria and what he's seen her do, and like how he was willing to give her the chance because of their relationship and how it's grown. But Billy has been crazy and like on this other path that like he never really took that into consideration. He's not having that journey that Huey is with Victoria. So I feel like that's why he just kept thinking of her as like when we first met her, and it was like someone to not be trusted. Especially, I think, because she was going to be in cahoots with Homelander, he was probably like, nah, we need to just get rid of her. And because she was going to become the president. So I think he was just thinking about that. So, and just was like, fuck it.
Too dangerous to be left alive.
Yeah. And then they say it in this episode, like, the boys was like, fuck it. So I think that's what Billy was thinking.
No, that's fair and probably true. Okay, so after we find out that Huey has been having a lot of sex with fake Annie, and Annie sort of gives him a little bit of a hard time for a little while. As a girl, is that the right amount of hard time that she gave him for not figuring out that it was not her that whole time?
Yeah, if it had just been the 2 days, I would have been like, okay. But the 10 days, I was like, really? Like, because I think if it was my situation, like, well, the thing that's different is because if it was just like becoming the physical part, there would definitely be tells, like if it was me and I had a double me, like my husband would know right away, like, oh, the person's actually not eating. She's like, that's not Catherine, or something like that.
Right.
What's going on? She's cleaning after herself, or I don't know what.
This
like,
person wants sex twice a day. Apparently, that would be a big change for a lot of people.
Yeah, so something, like you would know those, like, and because the other way, like the tells usually like she can read every, like knows all the memories, knows all the like probably the mannerisms and things. So like I can understand Huey not knowing that right away. But yeah, like if that wasn't normal, or maybe it was with them, he didn't notice, but it sounded from like Starlight's reaction that it wasn't. And he just kind of like, okay, this is a change. We're gonna just, it's Annie, new Annie. So I would give him a hard time, but I think it was nice that she kind of like was like, fine, whatever.
Yeah, I agree that it was the right amount of hard time. We're going to get you tested for STDs and
Yeah.
just never talk about this again.
Yeah.
Hopefully, anyway. All right, so at the very, very end, Huey gets captured and Starlight flies off. And at that point, Butcher are the only members of the boys left at large. But I don't know. I don't really see her racing to team up with him after what happened in the bunker and his new kind of outlook on things. Like you mentioned a second ago, we know that he's edging really closer to just going scorched earth on Soups, which she is.
Yeah.
Even independent of that, I don't think she'd be racing to align herself with him. But I don't know what else she has in store. Do you have any ideas what she might do post flying off, post having no more allies, being completely outed, and like they were on the news, as being part of this assassination of Victoria and having been told by Singer, who's now under arrest, to have done it?
I mean, she really has nowhere to go. I wonder if she would go with her mom, but I feel like that's probably the first area they would go, or the first place they would go and try to get her. So I feel like she can't go there. There has to be some sort of backup plan, maybe that they had from her past that maybe she can go to that she thinks no one will know, like, and we'll see that happen in the 5th season. But also, like, I don't like her getting her powers back too. I felt like the Kimiko and Frenchie thing, it dragged on too long in the season and there was really no real rhyme and reason for it. And then how it came back either. I don't know. That left me feeling unsatisfied. I don't know about if it felt the same way to you, but like her just flying off after she's had like spazzy powers for like the whole season. I was just like, okay.
Yeah, it was convenient for the plot. And in a way, it's like the lack of her best powers kind of upped the stakes for fighting the fake Annie and that whole situation, but without it having any real explanation. If it never happens again, then it will feel totally unearned.
Yeah, like there was just like, I mean, I didn't need a whole thing, but it was like, there was really nothing. I thought, I was like, maybe it's because, she's feeling like the Starlighter stuff and having to decide whether to be out in the open, like at the beginning of the season. It made sense, right? Like why there would be a blockage. But then as it went on, like I was like, they're not giving us anything. It's just saying that it's not working. So it can emotionally pay off at the end. And then it didn't, because I'm like, well, I don't know what was blocking it. It wasn't Huey. It wasn't like your mom. It wasn't like really what was it? And then all of a sudden, like what brought it back? Because if it had been necessity to get out of a certain situation, she would have made it happen when she had the handcuffs. So
Yeah,
that
right.
didn't work either. Yeah.
Just a little convenient.
Yes.
In a way that leaves me wondering, like if they never approach this again next season, then it's a pretty bullshit to have done it this way.
Yeah, because they talk about it so much throughout the season, like her not having powers. Like we see it. So they better bring it back. Like maybe at the end of that flying, she lands and then she's so exhausted that her powers go out again or something.
Well, with Vought-associated Soups having been deputized, I wonder if there's sort of like a non-union Soups, that this is where we start to see the A-Trains and the Maves make their return, is that she has to figure out who she can deal with, who she can trust. And I just don't think it's going to be Billy. How can it be Billy?
Yeah, I don't think it can be Billy unless she's super desperate. Which, I mean, she might be.
Well, she'll be hunted, so it could be desperate, and we don't know, like, the flight aspect of her powers is new. And so that might run on sort of like adrenaline. And once she gets some distance away, it might just give out on her and be like, I need to land. You know?
Yeah. I mean, I think the more logical thing of like besides where she goes to get resources is, I mean, her number one mission will be trying to get Huey back. And we all know that Huey, especially like the first two seasons or something, was a big part of the Butcher Annie storyline. So maybe, I mean, maybe it could unite them again, because that would kind of be full circle, you know, like the first to fifth season of like having to save Huey, which like he hadn't needed to be saved in a while, but this one, if that's sort of like the mission, it would make more sense in that way, and be like a nice tied together of how it started and then how it ends.
That would feel satisfying to make those sorts of connections like that, bring it back around. Because there's certain thematic things and certain plot things that they have done a good job with that callbacks give dedicated viewers that satisfaction, despite the complaints that we've had about, say, Frenchie and Kimiko or whatever. I would say overall, the show is more successful doing those sorts of things, but they have a chance to stick the landing here, you know?
Yeah, like it's not like even the stuff I brought up that like doesn't make sense and everything. Like I still enjoyed watching this season. I just feel like it suffers from, you know, season 4 issues that like all TV shows. Like it's really hard to stick a season 4 like be just as, you know, tied up as other seasons, especially in this kind of show where they are always having to up the ante, or else people will think it's like a disappointment, or they, you know, if you're a boys fan and there's not like enough gore or, you know, heads exploding or people being pulled apart, they'll be like, okay, that wasn't cool. I get the challenge and having to fulfill both like the story arc and then also just fun entertainment value. So it was fun to watch this season. It's just like some of those stories, like if you dig a little deeper, which we are, it's like, okay, that doesn't really make sense, you know?
I agree. So we've been mentioning Butcher and this idea of his Kessler side, the dark side. So we understood that by accepting that side of himself, that he not only can access his powers, but he also is not bedridden anymore. So functionally, are we kind of thinking that that side of him also feeds whatever energy he needs to stay alive? Because he's fine, he's driving, you know, but Kessler's there in the car with him. He was able to access his powers. He was fine in the scene where he tore Newman apart, but he'd been bedridden and very feeble up until then. So is it, as long as he's accessing Kessler, then he's okay?
I do feel like he had to shut off his humanity in a way, and Kessler took over. Maybe that's what fuels the soup in him, because, I mean, the V that he took altered him, but, like, I feel like it affected him differently, unless that's how all soups are. Like, Zoe kind of has a similar thing, but I don't know, maybe it comes with it, like the hallucinations, and that's, like, the turn on and off, you know, like, as a soup, like, that's just what he has to deal with, of having the two sides of, you know, and that's so haunting too, of like, of course the V would fuck him up in that way of like having to not only be a soup, but to have this like voice in you telling you what to do, which I wonder if it is part of the superpower or just him having to deal with it. But I feel like it is part of the superhero power that he got from V, because I feel like if you're doing it that way, you don't know what you're gonna get.
Did you notice that the people that have taken the V in their latter stages, whether it's Zoe or Ashley,
always get the same kind of...
Yeah, they get these ugly, wormy powers.
Yeah, it feels like almost it's very unnatural, if that's what they're kind of going for, that you shouldn't be injecting that to become something that you're not, so you're going to get this like horrible...
Nasty, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, like because it's not meant to be.
The Ashley situation, Jesus.
Oh my God. But of course Ashley would get that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But also I was kind of happy for Ashley, because I was like, good for you. Like, you're going to stand up to them in her own way, or at least go down trying to fight it off and not just be like a lackey, which Ashley has never been that. So I wouldn't expect anything less from her.
I wonder what will happen if Butcher sees Becca again and there's that conflict. If not having pure dedication to his Kessler side, I'm sure it will result in a lack of access to his powers, but will it also degrade his health immediately? It'd be interesting to see how that works out. All right, so we were talking last episode and throughout the season about Billy's ability to persuade Ryan in a way that made sense to Ryan. But then Grace comes along and just dumps on him all these things, like your dad killed all these people and you need to come with us now, and I'll flood the room with gas if you don't. Now, I mean, this was the wrong approach, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, like, do this or I'm going to kill everyone. It's never the way to go.
Was witnessing killing Grace in that same kind of way that he killed the scripted save guy, do you suppose like that tipped over from, I mean, in episode 7 where Ryan has that little moral stand on TV and Butcher's like, that's why I believe in the kid, but then he goes and kills Grace purposely.
Yeah.
Is that like it? Is it like, fuck that kid?
Well, I also think that he tried to do it, quote unquote, the right way, or a way that Becca would approve of, and then it didn't work. And he's like, well, I'm going to do it my way now. I feel like he would be stubborn in that sense of like, I was trying to give it the good old try and like honor Becca's memory and her last wish, but then it didn't work. And then I feel like he's probably just going to go revert back, you know, and just do whatever he wants because he's going to be like, fuck it. And I'm dying already, which I mean, died for a long time, but he's still dying.
Well, there will probably be some moment of conflict in the final season where Becca will reappear. That'll be a very interesting kind of moment to see what he ultimately decides to do, because leading up to that point, I think he's going to be like a wrecking ball, doing whatever he wants to whoever he wants with Kessler and his chest snake powers.
Yeah, what a gnarly, what a horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In one of the plots where they actually tried to kill Captain America in the comics, there was a guy with powers just like that. His little tendrils had poison, and that's what, I don't know if they killed Captain America or they had to suck out the super soldier serum in order to save him, and so that just aged him into an old man and kind of made him unimportant. So I wonder if that's kind of inspiration for that kind of weird powers, because you're right, it is an unattractive power.
Yeah, any tentacles that look like worm-like, I'm like, I'm good.
Yeah. All right, so Billy has just the one dose of virus left, and Samir's out of pocket, and there's no one left to help him make any more. So are we sure that he is gunning for Homelander with it at this point? I mean, that's always been the goal, but now he knows that Ryan is, or his current state of mind is that Ryan is a lost cause.
I think Ryan was the last thing keeping his humanity in some ways, or in this episode, he was really fighting Kessler, which fighting himself, if we're to believe his logic, and to really like not go, in no other words, but like balls to the wall crazy. So, which he did. Yes, which he did, or tentacles to the wall. And Billy always, I feel like he really wants to do the right thing. But I just feel like he just always just sabotages himself. You know, it's like he can't help himself. And I think he thinks he's doing the right thing as well, which is also kind of like, it's hard to deal with someone like that. But like, I do truly think he was wanting to do the right thing. And with Ryan just being like going off and kind of rebelling against him, I feel like that was the last bit to be like, well, that was Becca's last wish. I gave it a good old try. I'm ready to go back now, you know, and be my
This is the best I can do. I tried everything. Grace blew me up, and so here we are.
Yeah, and then I feel like he's like, you know, I gave it the good old college try, but didn't happen. So here they are. I feel like he just always wants that little bit of an out, and just to go crazy.
All right. So my last bit of questions has to do with Homelander. So he blows things up on Firecrackers TV show with Newman. He kind of jumps the gun with his insistence that she outs herself. So he outs her for her, I guess. But I was wondering, is his mental state, his stability all season has been sliding. He had that kind of course correction where he went and killed everybody in his former lab area, and that kind of evened him out for a little bit. But now he went and blew up his own plan by outing Newman. Did you see that as like just a continuation on like the slide to just complete madness? Or is it just he's just impatient and couldn't help himself? Or how did you look at that scene?
I think Homelander has no chill.
No, that's true.
And I also think that all the things were going wrong for him, and he does not do well with not things going his way. He's very much like a child tantrum. The Ryan thing had happened, and then he was just like, fuck it. Like, he always has to do something like that makes him feel better. And I think feeling better is like, oh, he's like, I'm just going to out Victoria, and that's going to make me feel good.
Yeah, good call.
Yeah, and I feel like that's what it is. Like, he is not normal in the sense of like, oh, I'm feeling bad, let me go have a coffee or whatever, or I'm gonna go to the spa. Like, he's like, I need to go make someone feel like shit, or I need to just go and blow up somebody. And in this case, he was fuming, and he was also just hearing Victoria kind of do bullshit, which, I mean, fair if he was annoyed by it, but it had just gotten too much for him, and it was like, I'm so annoyed right now that I'm just going to keep doing that. You know what I mean?
That's probably right. Both of those things, that he feels better by making other people feel bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you surprised about how the Ashley situation went? I mean, he calls her a good girl, which is not a nice thing to say. And then just on a whim at Deep's off-the-cuff suggestion, he puts her on the kill list.
It just goes to show you that, like, how he just doesn't care, no loyalty to any, I think, person.
Or, well, especially human.
Especially human. Yeah, he could care less. But it was surprising because, like, I mean, Ashley could have got killed a long time ago. So you would think that, like, maybe he had grown accustomed to her a little bit, like, oh, he would tolerate her. She served a purpose. She did do some things that would annoy him. And, like, usually if that happened, someone would get blown up or, like, lasered or whatever.
Right.
So it was kind of a miracle that she lasted that long. But credit to her for doing so. And then, like, yeah, for her just to be like, oh, yeah, like, you can get rid of her too. Who cares? Like, it was just like, wow, what an ass.
Yeah.
But also kudos to Ashley for, like, knowing that was probably coming. I mean, she knows by staying there that she was on the chopping block, right? Like, she had a death wish, kind of, or she's also just so, like, power hungry, and, like, she doesn't have anywhere else, or maybe she just thinks, like, you know what, I have no other choice, because, like, they will find me and blah blah blah, like, like, why am I even gonna run? But I'm glad that she kind of made that choice to just, like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna go and like, protect myself and get a V, and, like, instead of just running away, she could have just run away, but she was like, no, I'm gonna arm myself with V and hope for the best.
Hope for the best is right. I mean, as we know, she's very likely not dead, because the scene cut away from her as she was kind of going through this Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde sort of change. So I think we can assume that she is still on the board, and she doesn't owe anything to Homelander at this point. I don't know what her powers are going to be, but she may have a potential role to play as an ally to Annie next season.
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially, actually, the question that you had earlier of, like, where would Annie go? I mean, maybe she connects with A-Train.
Maybe, yeah. He's completely off the grid at this point, and might not even be in the country. So there's that to contend with. But I'm thinking all of these cast off characters are gonna be who she needs to team up with in order to make it happen next season. Ashley, as the former CEO of Vought, even if she was a figurehead, still had access to a ton of information that Annie would find very useful for knowing things like where prison camps are, breaking out her allies.
So I wonder if Ashley took the V and then she just escapes, or if she stays there and like pleads her case to Homelander, like, hey, I'm a soup now and like I can help, and then kind of maybe be an informant or whatever.
Boy. Wow. I hadn't even thought of that aspect. I assumed escape, but if she's a soup too, then she all of a sudden is worthwhile to him, which she hadn't been as just a plain human.
Or he could be really annoyed that she took the V and just like, try to kill her too. So, because that's where Homelander is.
Yeah, both of those are fair. I'm leaning more toward he'd rather that she be off the board than see her as a potential equal because she's suddenly now a soup.
She's been one of the characters that has been there from the beginning. And so I do feel like her arc has been funny, and also progressing. Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting to see how she navigates this new soupdom. But if you think about it, like she could have taken V long time ago. She chose not to, and only in this moment where she was like super desperate was like, okay, I'm going to do it.
Well, and looking at how it turned out, I just got to wonder what those powers are going to be. Because like we mentioned, if you take it too late, they seem to be really messed up powers. Like her hair fell off in like one piece,
Yeah, it was disgusting.
Sort of like, have you ever seen An American Werewolf in London?
Oh, yes, long time ago.
Do you remember how visceral the transformation scenes were?
Yes. Oh, I still remember. Yeah. Yeah, and it felt like, I don't know why I thought about this, but it reminded me of like The Witches, like the live action movie.
I never saw The Witches.
Oh, I guess it's like a childhood, like, I don't know, I saw when I was like, they showed it to us when we were kids or something, which is like a crazy movie to show us because it was, those witches were very practical, but they were really scary when they would like, they would be like normal, like Angelica Houston, kind of vibe by day. And then you would see them, they would have these scenes where they would pull off their human faces and then it would like reveal this like witches and stuff. And it reminded, one of them I think doesn't have hair like Ashley's transformation, like sort of just like a little bit like peppered in like kind of strands. And so I immediately just like thought of that image because it felt like that sort of thing. And I was like, oh, poor Ashley.
Did you ever see the early Netflix series called Hemlock Grove?
Yeah, that was their first series.
Was it their first series?
I think it was, yeah. Besides like I think it was that, and then it was House of Cards.
And there was that one Lilyhammer that was also very early. But yeah. Do you remember how the one guy, when he would turn into a werewolf, it was messy, man. Yeah. It was really gross. Similar to how the shapeshifter has to change by completely removing the outer skin. It reminded me of that as gross.
Very visceral though. Like I like when those kind of things happen because sometimes I think we've been so adjusted to like the CGI. We're like, whatever. But like the episode with the shapeshifter and like then this, it feels real, which is nice for a change. You don't feel so like desensitized to like, it's just CGI again. Like it actually feels like it's happening.
And I guess an interesting aspect might be that there's a cost or inconvenience to using a power where a lot, like you mentioned with a lot of the Marvel characters, they just have access to their powers. They just, whatever they want to do, they do it. No big deal. But if you have to like scrape your skin off in order to make the change, that's a much bigger inconvenience than just popping your claws or whatever.
Which I guess is the commentary on like, be careful what you wish for, right? Like, you would think you would want to be superhuman, but actually, it's not all rainbows and, flying and, just laser eyes. It's very much not that. And I feel like that's just like a commentary on, having everything, but like the sacrifices that come with that and blah, blah, blah. And the grass is greener on the other side, but with exceptions. So I do like that aspect of it where like the soups having superpowers is not necessarily like something people want to do. So I guess Ashley was also like, she fought it for a long time where she could have taken V but was like, nah, I'm good, until she absolutely had to take it.
Yeah, that's a good comment. Like if we look at, say, Homelander's powers, the Superman powers, those are often traditionally the powers that people would say, yep, I want that as their preferred powers, flight, strength, all that kind of stuff. But he's also by far the worst person.
Yeah.
And it seems like the more ideal the powers, like, remember the guy that could turn invisible? He was also a predatory piece of shit.
Yeah.
Like, the more ideal the power, the worse the person was.
Yeah, I guess they're kind of doing the opposite of, with great power comes great responsibility, but like, what if with great power you're not responsible and you don't give a shit?
Yeah, interesting. Never really made that connection before, but that's totally right. Okay, so all season long, we've been betting on Sage knowing more than she was letting on. And in this episode, she basically confirmed your theory that she'd been doing all of this just to see if she could.
Yeah, I was right. I was so happy.
So what do you suppose phase 2 is?
Ooh, I mean, total world domination.
That's what it seems like to me.
She conquered the US, so I mean, what else is next? It has to be just moving towards, and I mean, and A-Train alluded to it too. He was like, you think they're not going to, when he was talking to Mother's Milk, he's like, you think they're not going to find you in Belize? What is next after the US? It's like, it's going to be everywhere else. So I feel like she's just going to see maybe if she can create total soup domination across all the world just because she's bored.
Yeah, that's the only thing that makes sense, is to see how far she can take this experiment. Because, like she led on with Homelander, yeah, there were some road bumps, but ultimately things turned out the way that she thought that they would. And even better, I mean, with Newman was a very imperfect vessel for their puppet leader. Whereas who even knew that the Speaker of the House would have been perfectly willing this whole time to be their guy? All right, so my last question has to do with the post-credit scene. What read did you get from Homelander on that Soldier Boy reveal?
Oh, wait, I didn't see this post-credit scene.
All right, well, let me explain.
Yeah.
There is a room with a, like, suspended animation capsule in the center of it. The president, the new president, the one we just mentioned, the Speaker of the House, who's been elevated to president, walks in with Homelander and says that as soon as he found out about this, Homelander was his first call. And he says, really? And then the guy's like, hand to God, I think is what he said. And so they walk over to the capsule, look inside, and laying there is Jensen Ackles. The camera looks back up at Homelander, and his face just runs through a series of emotions in that sort of Homelander tick-ridden kind of way, where it's like eyebrows and corners of his mouth and stuff sort of start moving around. But you could swear that there was just a hint of glazing in his eyes, like glistening. But maybe I'm just reading into that.
He is the OG. So I feel like, and I had a feeling that he probably would be coming back. Isn't he the only one that can really like kind of knock Homelander off? And he's even more psychotic than Homelander.
Well, their fighting never seemed to result in a clear winner.
No. And they weren't really on the same page because Homelander wanted to be in the spotlight, and I think they're two alphas, like it's
Super
not going to
alphas,
work
yeah.
out. Super alphas. So it could go either way, where like he's like, oh, maybe we could team up, but also maybe he's like, oh no, like, do I even want to deal with it? Like this kind of thing.
it was a scene that they needed because you can't keep Soldier Boy out of the conversation for the rest of the show. But it was unclear what they were going to do with this information. You know, is he just content to leave him there? Because they did not, like you say, you can't have two alphas in the same room without massive conflict happening. And they did not see eye to eye on how things should go or that they should even coexist together. I was unclear on what they were going to do. My bet is Homelander is going to leave his ass in there. But the fact that they showed it to us in a very Chekhov's gun kind of way means we are going to see him again.
Yeah, definitely. They also can't sideline Jensen Ackles. Like, he's such a good actor, and then especially with that character, I feel like he did such a great job that, like, I understand why they sidelined him this season, because it would have been too much. But I think if they're going for a big series finale, you know, of like season 5, I feel like they're just going to bring all the big guns. So it makes sense. But I'm just trying to figure out, like, where is he going to play? Like, what role will he play, you know? And also, will Ryan be involved? Because technically that would be like, what, his grandson?
Technically, yes.
Yeah.
They did find a way to work Soldier Boy into Gen V. There was like a trap that had been set so that all of the characters had to exist within the mind of another character. And that character had sort of like an imaginary friend version of Soldier Boy that was in their head. And so it gave them an excuse to have Jensen Ackles show up and be Soldier Boy for a few minutes. And but it wasn't actually Soldier Boy. It was this person's head version of Soldier Boy. So it's sort of like, you ever see Jojo Rabbit? So it's sort of like how that kid had his own version of Hitler. It was like this person's own version of Soldier Boy.
Okay, yes.
So it's kind of funny in that way.
Yeah. Well, what do you think's going to happen? Like, what do you think?
I do think it's going to be just a battle royale. Anything less, and there will be rioting in the streets. You know?
Yeah.
Going 5 years, waiting years between seasons. If there is not just a huge, every soup we've ever seen coming to this battle, then people are going to wonder why they bothered with this show. And so where does Soldier Boy come in? I think he's got to be maybe not pro Annie, but anti Homelander.
I just hope that it's all coming down to an epic battle.
It's got to, right?
Yeah, it has to.
That's one of the hallmarks of comic books, you know, is even amongst characters that are supposed to be friends. If you read comic books, it's like they need to go every few panels. They need to have some kind of conflict or fight of some kind, even if it's amongst people that are supposed to be on the same team. You know, just, well, Cyclops and Wolverine never really liked each other. So Cyclops is going to blow Wolverine out of the bedroom or the building with his blast. Right. But it's just because there's nothing else that would be happening on that page. So they got to amp up the excitement a little bit.
I mean, I really thought we were going to like see the last of Kessler for a bit, but of course they couldn't let Jeffrey Dean Moore, you know, just be there for an episode or two. So,
he's got to be coming back.
Yeah, he has to, because especially now that he has like that persona has taken over, like he's going to be front and center.
I mean, I love the way that they set up next season by having the boys just in the worst way possible. You know, they're all captured except for one of them, Annie, and the country is basically taken over with this kind of fascist, we're going to put everybody who doesn't agree with us in jail kind of thing. So there's a lot to dig out from. As a season ender, it really subverted what I had come to expect from the boys. There was no big battle, and I kind of wanted there to be, because that's what I look forward to. There's usually like a lot of powers being used at the beginning of the season, and then a lot of powers being used at the end of the season. In the middle, you know, not so much.
Not so much, yeah.
And this time, except for the Billy Butcher reveal, that was it. And last episode, there was kind of a superpowered fight, but it's sort of a mini fight.
I feel like also the creators are probably like, you've seen so much of the CGI in the Marvel DC universe lately that like the things that they will be doing with these soups is not going to be anything new. Like they are truly focusing on the stories and the characters and stuff. So like I can appreciate that. But I mean, they have given us good fights, and like I did like the fight in the last episode. I just didn't like the result. I really wanted the Deep to lose, but like it was fun.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh yeah, they can do these battles, but they don't do them very often. But I just feel like maybe they're saving it for season 5, and it's going to be like super action packed. I mean, because people are going to have to die left and right in season 5, so maybe it's just like setting us up for really big things to come.
It's got to be. It might even need to kill people right away to show us that the stakes of season 5 are really high. Maybe not everybody escapes, particularly heart-wrenching kind of thing, a very Game of Thrones kind of thing.
Yeah, let's hope not that. But
Yeah.
I mean, you never know on The Boys, so.
Well, like say we know that Kimiko and Frenchie have reset back to kind of a romantic phase of their relationship. It makes perfect sense to kill one of them now.
Yes, but towards the end of the season, though, like it has to be, because if they do it in the beginning, then like kill Frenchie, and unless they're doing it, which I would also not like, if they kill one of them to motivate the other one, that's also sort of like a cheap trick. So I hope they don't do that right away.
Usually they kill the girl, but
yeah, I know.
Kimiko's sort of unkillable.
She'll just grow back.
Like that little leg. Did you notice the little leg?
Yeah.
Sort of Deadpool style.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Did you notice though, there was a subtle moment when it was Victoria Newman when like she had revealed Homelander revealed that she was a soup, and then they come off after, and she's like, what the fuck, like all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then she had given him like the knowledge that like, hey, you're gonna have to like basically kill half the population or blah blah blah, and then he kind of was like,
Of course, yeah,
oh,
sure.
and he was like, oh fuck, like he hadn't thought that far.
Yeah.
I thought that was so funny.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, Ashley, I need you to put together a list.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Well, he's so reactive. And he had already written Sage off at that point, and he thought that he could run everything in this iron-fisted, just do it because I say it kind of way. But it doesn't usually involve that much thinking ahead. All right. Well, do you have any other discussion points that you'd like us to consider before we sign off for this season of The Boys?
For not so much action, I was going to say it was action-packed, but like action-packed with more like story threads that are weaving into the next season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this set up the next season in a way that they haven't done since the first season. Like seasons 2 and 3 were almost, they were of themselves. Like they had Stormfront. That was that season. And when the big fight happened at the end, it felt a little done. Whereas in the first season, when they end with Homelander showing up at Becca's house, that was very much kind of like this. Like, oh shit, what's going to happen next? I'm glad to have this kind of thing. I'm sad though, because they don't make these very fast.
Yeah, we're going to have to wait. We're going to talk in another 2 years.
Yeah, right. All right, Kat. Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you about The Boys this season. I'm glad you could join me and share your opinions on everything that happened this season. You always bring a different perspective than I have, and I'm appreciative that you make the time to talk with me about it.
Yes, it's been so much fun. I'm glad we've, kept it going no matter our circumstances or where I'm at. And likewise, it's always so much fun talking, TV shows, especially this one that's like sort of crazy and we never know what to expect. So
that's what makes it so much fun to talk about. It's because it does, they don't necessarily always fall back on the expected trope. So it's always fun. If you enjoyed this podcast, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to it on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you found it. If you have a question for Kat or I, just go to podclubhouse.com, find this post or any boys-related post, and leave a comment, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening. This has been an original Pod Clubhouse production. Pod Clubhouse is a podcast network dedicated to encouraging collaboration among podcasters and friends to bring a fresh voice and diverse perspective on a wide array of content. Please visit and leave a comment for us at podclubhouse.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Pod Clubhouse. Our DMs are always open, and we'd love to hear from you.